I think we can all agree this 2020 season has been one for the decades, one that's not going to be easy to forget, and that will leave a lasting impression in the minds of all of us lucky enough to have lived to see it. But why are we talking about it? How did we get to this point? And what was the factor that made this season so awesome? First off, we have to state that there is no single thing we can say made this 2020 season so interesting. So we will go through each one of them and explain how they played their part into making such a memorable season. The first thing that happened was the extremely late cancellation of the Australian Grand Prix. The spreading pandemic put an early halt on the season, but not early enough to ward off the already built-up excitement. On Thursday, we got the chilling announcement that one of McLaren's team members had been tested positive for COVID. Zak Brown then made clear that McLaren wouldn't be taking part in the Australian Grand Prix. And the next day, as the fans lined up outside the circuit to see the start of the first FP1 of the year, we got word that the event was being called off completely. But little did we know what would follow. Over the next couple of days and weeks, we would get postponement over postponement, and we weren't sure if most or any of the races would be able to take place, seeing as the F1 circus flies around the globe with staff and supplies all the time, and the global situation was only getting worse. By the end of May was the earliest estimation after the first event was cancelled and the following 3 postponed, but as we all know, that wasn't even close to what happened. After the longest off-season in history, both fans and drivers were eager to get back going, and the wait made it more worth it when we first got back going in Austria. The anticipation and, well, F1 withdrawal we were experiencing made the first race even more exciting. Me personally, I could barely sleep that Thursday because I was over the moon for FP1. When was the last time you heard anyone say that, huh? And although it ended up being a banger, we can't deny that it was partially helped by the extremely low expectations we had. We just wanted to see some cars. That excitement continued over the months, and now, with one event remaining at the time of recording, it seems like the season has gone by in a whiz. Next up, the calendar. This year we were set to have a 22-race calendar with the introduction of the Hanoi Street Circuit and the return of Zandvoort, added to the exit of Hockenheim from the championship. But after the cancellation of pretty much every race, FOM had to start from scratch and put together a calendar in pieces, trying to stay local to Europe to reduce intercontinental travel and making it easier for logistics, seeing as every team had to take all their equipment race after race without the flexibility of available options for transport like they usually have, which is usually in the shape of airplanes or freight ships. So in June we had confirmation of the first few events and the introduction of repeat races, like we've had in Austria and the UK. The first 2 races were to be held at the Red Bull Ring, followed by Hungary, which would mean a triple header to set off the season. Nice. Followed by another triple header consisting of 2 races at Silverstone and 1 in Montmeló, and then Spa and Monza. Overall, we were pretty happy with this, seeing as all but one of those tracks was usually great for racing, but we were not expecting what was to come next. On July 10, we got confirmation that the Russian Grand Prix was still going to be held! Oh, and Mugello would make its F1 debut, I guess. And a few weeks later, we got word that the Nürburgring was coming back alongside Imola. The former had seen its last F1 race in 2013, and the latter in 2006. But the surprises didn't end there. F1 would race at the Algarve for the first time, which ended up being a better Catalonia. And then we got confirmation that F1 would return to Turkey. In August, we got the final pieces of the puzzle, the last triple header, consisting of the Bahrain Grand Prix circuit, and interestingly enough, the outer layout as well, where blisteringly quick laps have made the 87-lap race one of the best ones we've seen all season. And to finish off, we got Abu Dhabi. They can't all be winners, I guess. Overall, this calendar has been the standout of the season. With old circuits coming back and new ones debuting, it's been an absolute banger of a calendar, the best I've seen live for sure, and if FOM are taking note, they should maybe bring back a few of the circuits for the new era of F1. Added to the compression of it all, we've had 17 races in 24 weeks, and although it's been insane for the fans to watch, it's been hectic for the poor team staff, who have been working 7-day weeks for quite a while now. COVID also put a spin on the grid, and in ways we didn't expect. We've seen things like Nico Hülkenberg, Jack Aitken, and George Russell on a Mercedes, all thanks in part to COVID, and although I'm not celebrating the fact that drivers fell ill, that is horrible, we have to acknowledge that it gave a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to Jack, and a nice surprise for Nico and George. Another thing that hasn't hurt is the surprise of pace or lack thereof, that Ferrari have had this season, which elevated the midfield fight to a whole new level. And I know we say this every year, but it's just been getting closer and closer between the teams, but most importantly, closer to the top as well. With Renault, Racing Point and McLaren, we've had races where we left and the difference between the three has been a single point. And now, more than ever, it's crucial for all those teams to finish on top, because that position is not fourth, but third, and the cash boost is insane. There is not much I can add to the midfield fight than what I've said in my specific video on the topic, which you can go and watch up there on the iCard when we are done here. But speaking of the midfield, we cannot ignore the sheer amount of color and variety we've had on the podium this season. 13 different drivers to be exact, and that hasn't happened since 2012, which is usually rated as the best season in current Formula 1 history. And who better to tell you about this feat than Cass and Chris of the CCF1 YouTube channel. Take it away, guys.
Let's just get right into it. With 13 different podium sitters across 16 races so far, there's a lot to unpack here.
Taking it all the way back to July 2020 for the Austrian Grand Prix, where Valtteri won the race and has since stood on the podium a total of 10 times this season. This was followed by Charles Leclerc, who outperformed his Ferrari in this race, getting his second place and then a third place at the British Grand Prix. We also got our first taste of last lap Lando after he scored his first maiden podium, finishing in third place, taking full advantage of Hamilton's penalty.
Moving on into the following week at the Styrian Grand Prix, we saw Lewis Hamilton take his first out of 11 wins of the season, and unsurprisingly, he has been on the podium a total of 13 times. With Valtteri coming in second, this meant that Max took third place on the podium, which ended up being one of 10 total podiums that he got this season, including one win at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix. This podium combination is the first of 7 times that we have seen them together on the podium this season. Moving on now to the Italian Grand Prix, up until this point, the Hamilton, Bottas, and Verstappen combo has just been looking all too familiar. But this time around, we saw Pierre Gasly take his first ever win in Formula 1 after a tense battle leading down to the final lap on tires that were gradually slipping away from him. The man he was chased by was Carlos Sainz, who ended up finishing in second after a thrilling race to the finish line. Finally, Lance Stroll rounded off the podium with P3, and later ended up getting P3 again at the Sakir Grand Prix.
Moving on to the Tuscan Grand Prix, where we saw Alex Albon claim his first podium in F1 after being robbed twice in previous incidents with Hamilton. He then later on scored his second podium at the Bahrain Grand Prix.
At long last, at the Eiffel Grand Prix, we saw the Honey Badger back on the podium again with a third place at the Nürburgring, also solidifying Cyril's first tattoo. He backed this up with another third place in Imola, where he also remembered to do the shoey this time.
Looking at the Turkish Grand Prix, after a long race in the rain, we saw the likes of Sergio Perez coming out in second place, claiming his first podium of 2020. As incredible as this race was, it couldn't compare to his race at the Sakir Grand Prix, where he was knocked down into last place and made a comeback all the way to win his first race in Formula 1 after competing in 190 races. At this race, we also got to see 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel return to the podium in P3. He joined a very symbolic podium where Lewis Hamilton was celebrating his 7th world championship.
Finally, we saw Esteban Ocon claim his maiden podium in F1 with a P2 at the Sakir Grand Prix. Although it was a very chaotic race all around, he demonstrated a very smooth and controlled drive that brought him onto the podium for the Renault team.
That's a total of 13 different drivers on the podium this season, and with one race left, who knows what other faces we're gonna see up there.
Alright, so in conclusion, this year we went from thinking we wouldn't have F1 at all to having one of the best seasons in a long ass time. Full of tightly packed action, old tracks coming back, new tracks making their ways into the fans' hearts, cute dogs on track, and the best midfield battle of the hybrid era. And although a few weeks ago we've had a scare with Roman, he's recovering just fine, walking around the paddock and has now gone home to finish his treatment. We still have the season finale, and let me just say the midfield fight is still super close. Let's see how the season continues to impress us all and helps us forget what's going on in the world, because we all kind of need that right now. So yeah, this has been, well, another video. Huge thanks to Cass and Chris from the CCF1 YouTube channel. You should go check them out. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click this video on the right or this video on the left, and yeah, I will see you all next time.